Hi, I'm Joe Dickerson with the Joe Dickerson Group at Keller Williams Realty. This is my wife, Annie.
Hey.
We thought we'd invite you into our home and talk a little bit about the selling process.
Yeah, we thought we'd just keep it super casual, and basically I'm here to ask Joe all the tough questions that you might be grappling with as you are navigating the decision to sell your home. So with that, shall we jump in?
Let's get started.
Okay. All right. Number one, how do you know when it's the right time to sell your home?
Right. So in my experience, most sellers are either relocating or upsizing and downsizing. That seems to be the most common reason people are deciding to sell. So therefore, the timing of the selling is very much dependent on what else is going on in their lives. So if they're starting a new job out of state, obviously there's a timeline associated with that. Upsizing and downsizing, though, is a very different time frame. Things like school schedules might come in more into play in that case. So the short answer is it depends on your situation, and I'm happy to chat about it, but really that's something that we'll work through and decide what's best.
So let's say that I've decided that I want to sell my house, but there's nothing immediate, but maybe we have a few months, maybe up to a year.
Okay.
So at what point do I get in touch with a real estate agent and start that process?
Sure. I think the sooner the better in almost all cases, because there's a lot that can go into selling the home that you'll want to prepare for. We just talked about timing. That's a part of it, and things don't just happen right away. Some things take time. And then there's all the things around preparing a home for sale. So there might be some renovations or upgrades or maintenance of any scale, really, that takes time to schedule with a contractor or painters or whatever to get done. And then there's also, you may choose to stage your home, which will make it most appealing to the most number of buyers, which is what you want, which also takes time to get on a schedule.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a lot that goes into that process. So it might be different from, if you've never sold a home before, you've only bought a home, that process might look very different. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say, yes.
Yeah. And I'm sure, on top of that, we've sold homes before, and it's not just about, just the steps of the process, but it can also be an emotional journey too, especially if you've lived in the home for many years and you have a lot of memories there. So it can take some time to get to that point where you're ready.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, then, okay. So talk to me then about Oakland and the East Bay. Now, everybody knows the San Francisco Bay Area, it has a very unique real estate market, shall we say. So as a seller in the East Bay, what are some things that people should keep in mind?
Right. There's a long list of those. We live in a special little bubble, especially Oakland and Berkeley, and starts to the specialness of our weird market fizzles out after that. But what that means for you as a seller is things like, I may recommend that you price your home way under what we expect to actually sell it for. That is what's normal right now in Oakland and Berkeley, in a lot of neighborhoods at least. And so that's what I recommend, such that we bring in the most number of buyers and ultimately get you the highest price.
Wait. Can you give me an example? So when you say underpriced, give me an example of what a house might actually sell for, but then what you would price it for.
Sure. So recent condo not far from where we live in North Oakland, we expected it to sell for somewhere in the low 800s. And we chose to price it at $699. So we're talking about, in that case, just over $100,000 over asking.
Yeah, and that's, if people are unfamiliar with the San Francisco Bay Area, I think that's really scary to know that you're pricing it so much under what you think it can get.
Right. Well, ultimately, the seller chooses whether or not they're going to accept an offer. So by pricing it low, that doesn't mean that you would be tied to accepting an offer at that price. It's simply a marketing strategy. And it's not the only marketing strategy. Sometimes pricing it transparently is the right thing to do. And so we would talk through that and decide what's best in your case.
Okay. Okay. So then you talked a little bit about marketing strategies. You know, that's a big part of getting your home on the market and getting it out to the right people to look at it and potentially to make an offer on it. So what are some of the marketing strategies you found to be effective?
Right. Well, okay. First thing I think of also ties into what's special about our market. And that is a very specific, concise, set marketing period. So in around where we live, it's very typical to see a 14-day or maybe 10-day marketing period. And what that means is we would go live, we'd go on the market on, let's say, a Thursday, and we'd have open houses that weekend. We would have brokers tour the following Monday and do a nighttime wine and cheese the next Thursday, and then more open houses the following weekend, and then we would look at all offers on one specific date. So this does a few things. First, as I mentioned, it's a thing that we do here that might be unique to us. And the second is it forces everyone into the home at the same time under the same time constrictions. So buyers in our current market know that houses are only going to be available for a set amount of time, and therefore they need to get in and see it. And that drives traffic up to our open house events, which makes the property look even more desirable when there's a lot of people around, and it creates this energy and maybe a little bit of an auction mentality where people decide they have to have it and end up netting you more money.
I see. So you put the house on the market, and then you do all these things, hold open houses and such, and you try to drive the momentum, and then you have a certain date where you're accepting all the offers and looking, or the deadline for offers, and then you're looking at all the offers.
Right.
So then let's say I'm a seller and the day comes and either we don't have any offers on the table or we don't have any offers I'm happy with.
Right.
So what happens?
And that does happen. Yeah, that does happen. So our work doesn't end there, obviously. It only, it cranks up. So typically the next step is to first reach back out to anyone and everyone that came through the house, or agents that called and asked questions about it perhaps a week and a half before, and see if there's people that might be on the fence. And one thing that's kind of weird about our market where we price low and expect it to go high is sometimes you end up with buyers that are interested in the house that don't offer on it because they think it's going to go even higher than their expectations. So basically it creates this, like, buyers are just throwing darts at a dartboard to guess at what price it'll land at. Now there is a lot more that goes into it, yet I work with enough buyers to know that that's the feeling they have, like with the range of it could sell for this or it could sell for $100,000 more, depends how much people love it.
Yeah, it's a crazy market. All right, I want to switch gears for a moment and talk about something else that's on a lot of sellers' minds, which is how to find the right real estate agent to work with. Now, you're a great guy, but not everybody is going to be the right fit to work with you and vice versa, right?
That's true.
And so I want to know, what tips do you have for people in going out there to finding the right agent to work with them on their home?
Sure. So I heard two things there: how to find the right agent and then what to look for in the right agent. So let's talk about what to look for. I believe that finding someone that you can put your trust in and have the utmost confidence in their abilities is kind of numero uno. And you want to feel comfortable with them as well. And you know, there's some personal details that might come up when selling a house. So being comfortable, being able to trust is two of the biggest things. for most people, or for people that choose me, I should say, that tends to be what is number one for them. And then where to find agents, I mean, I'm sure you all have seen a million different places that agents choose to advertise. There's no like number one source for the best agents. There are great agents to be found through everywhere you're probably already looking at home values and whatnot. And there are also not so great agents to be found in those same sources. So reading reviews is really helpful. If you have a personal referral, that's a great choice. And I'm happy to chat as well. Not, if you don't want to work with me because you see me here, that's cool. I can definitely help point you in the right direction, though.
That's great. Okay. So basically get out there, talk to people, and find somebody whom you're comfortable working with and whom you can trust.
Right.
And I think that, that makes sense because a lot of your clients are now our good friends, right?
Yeah.
And so you work very closely with them throughout the process and get very close with them.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
And for all those people, it's exactly that. It's the trustworthiness.
Yeah.
Now, there are other factors that are important to some people, like knowing the market. And they're all things that we all should know as real estate agents, knowing the market, negotiating skills, and the list goes on and on and on. So if one of those is maybe a higher level of importance, then interview towards it.
Okay, great. And so when you meet with a potential new client, what do you bring or what do you talk about? What do you go over in that session?
Sure. Well, the most important thing that I hope to get out of my first meeting is a needs assessment, figuring out what the seller actually needs. And in a lot of cases, I've found that selling is not the right choice for their needs. In some cases, especially in a multi-unit situation, renting out the unit to someone else might be a viable option. So that's number one, is I have a questionnaire that we go through together to figure out what the motivation is, what the needs are, and how I can best cater my services to that client. I also, every seller's interested in market value. What do I think the home will sell for? So I also come with a list of comparable sales so we can talk about what the home realistically could sell for if properly marketed and staged and prepared.
Yeah, I would say, that's super valuable to walk through what you might want out of a sale. I'm sure that lots of your clients learn a lot through that conversation, and you do too.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so before we wrap this up, I just wanted to understand, if I'm selling for the first time, run me through just high level, what are the overall steps of the process as a seller? Sure.
Okay. Well, that's a big part of our meeting as well, is what is the process and how does it work and who's going to do all the work. So at a very high level,
you do all the work.
I do a lot of the work. Yes, it's true. At a very high level, step one is find a real estate agent, because a good agent is going to help coordinate everything that comes after.
Right.
And some of those things are, even before your house hits the market, are working with a title company to make sure that we can deliver a clean title and pay off any outstanding loan balances. And then, of course, everything that goes into preparing a house, which typically we're talking about painting and doing some curb appeal stuff at the very minimum, but could go as far as changing light fixtures and possibly I've helped people renovate kitchens before.
Wait, can I pause there for a second?
Yes.
So if I'm getting ready to sell my house, why would I want to spend money to update the kitchen, let's say, when I'm not going to live there anymore?
Right. Yeah, this is a lot of sellers run into this. And so we end up having people that have freshly renovated their kitchen and selling and never get to enjoy their kitchen. And that's the reality of how life works. The reason that you would do it is because there will be a return on that investment. And we can look at comparable sales that show what similar houses in your neighborhood sell for with a dated kitchen versus ones with a renovated kitchen. And we can see, I'm talking generally here, but let's say it's a $100,000 difference between not renovated and renovated, and then we look at how much it would actually cost you to do the renovations and see if it's a viable investment.
Okay, I see. And so you look at the cost difference and then you decide whether it's worth it or not.
Right.
And so this is probably why it's really important to get in touch with an agent as soon as you're thinking about selling, so that if this is in consideration, you have the time to do it.
Right, and the budget. And this is, again, is a big part of the needs assessment, because a lot of times sellers either don't have the money to fix it up, that's okay, or they don't have the time. They need to relocate to wherever they're going right away. And that's okay. But this is something that happens a lot, the renovation and staging and all that. And it's a part of what goes into the process.
Okay, so keep going. So we've got
we were
the
talking
clean
about,
title,
yes.
we've got the possible staging and cleanup.
Fixing up the house, yes, as much as necessary. And we didn't even talk about moving out of the house potentially. In our current market, where we see a lot of vacant homes because they're easier to show, and therefore you get more buyers in, which ultimately leads you to a higher sales price. So if that's in the cards, we would recommend moving out, and maybe that means moving into your new home, or maybe it means doing an Airbnb for a few weeks, or if you're relocating, you might just relocate early. And then we have a vacant house to market, which is way more attractive to buyers than an occupied house. As nice as your stuff is, it's probably not what the mass buyer is looking for.
Don't insult them. We haven't even met them yet.
Sorry.
Okay. So let's say you get it all staged, and then what?
Right. So then, part of that preparation process is preparing all the marketing as well. So this is professional photography. I do floor plans on all my listings, which I love because it allows buyers that visit to go home with not just pictures, but a map of the house, which helps people remember exactly what's going on in the house. And when they're seeing 15 open houses in a weekend, it makes yours stand out a little bit more. So scheduling those things and making the photos and floor plans happen. We also are in a market where doing inspections prior to going on the market is pretty typical. So that means hiring a general home inspector as well as a pest inspector to come through and make sure that there aren't any big red flags, and exposing those to buyers up front. And that's a big question I get too, is why would we expose the problems with our house up front? So there's two answers to that. One is you will need to disclose everything you know about your house, positive or negative. And the other is by exposing things that even you may not know, we basically remove that piece of leverage from buyers' negotiations. So what happens is when you end up looking at offers, they all come, well, this is the plan at least, they come without an inspection contingency, meaning the offer that you see is the offer that you get. You don't end up getting a really nice offer with a contingency, and then buyers go do their own inspections and end up negotiating the price down.
Right. Okay. So
we were talking about the process.
Yes, we're talking about the process. It's a lot of steps of the process, guys.
Yes. So we're now in the setting up the marketing stuff. So we did photos and inspections and floor plans and all that. So then we do our custom branding and design to put together marketing pieces for the home. So that's obviously the open house flyers and stuff like that. We also send out just listed or coming soon, depending on timing, postcards to everyone in the neighborhood, about 200, 250 homes. And a lot of sellers are like, well, that's why. It turns out your neighbors probably know someone that they want to live in the neighborhood. So you end up potentially creating a buyer that wouldn't have been there otherwise. Or people that are renting in the neighborhood but want to own.
Right, right.
So there's that, the coming soon postcards. And then as we get ready to go on the markets, we really ramp up our pre-marketing. We post the home on it's called a top agent network, which is essentially the top 10% of realtors, which do about 90% of the business, as an exclusive off-market opportunity for their buyers. And the reason we do that is buyers that have access to off-market opportunities may be willing to pay a premium to keep it from going on the market. Does that make sense?
People who are tired of the multiple offer situation and they just
Right. And they've already submitted 6 offers and
yeah, we've been there.
Yes, that's right.
All right. Okay. So, all right, we've gone through the steps of the process. We've talked about how to find an agent. I've got one more question for you, which is, how do you make your money in all of this?
Sure. So I get paid a real estate commission at the closing of the transaction. So how that typically works is from the seller's proceeds, both the listing agents, which in our example would be me, and the agent representing the buyer would get some amount of commission. And that's how it works. Now, a lot of sellers will often be like, well, so I'm paying you money to market my house, right? Like, show me what you're doing. Obviously, sellers want value for their money. And hopefully we talked a little bit about what that value is. I have a binder that goes in more detail.
It's big.
But the other piece of it is it's ultimately the buyers that are paying everything. They're the ones that bring you the money, and then I get a piece of that money. So this also goes into the pricing conversation. When sellers say something like, I feel my house is worth, let's say $900,000, but the offer that we got is only $800,000, or the 10 offers we got are only $800,000. Well, it's those buyers that set the price, not the sellers. The sellers can obviously choose not to accept an offer, yet if there aren't any buyers willing to pay it, it kind of shows the market is speaking, and the home isn't actually worth that much.
Right. And I'm sure the marketing plays into that as well, which is why it's so important to find a good agent.
That's right.
Okay, so these lovely people who are here in our home.
Thank you for coming.
Let's say that they loved our home, which why wouldn't they love our home? And they've gotten some value out of this conversation, but maybe they have questions for you that I haven't asked yet, or maybe they're considering selling their home and might want to work with you on that. So how can they best get in touch with you?
Sure. Well, through all the typical avenues. I can be found on my cell phone at 510-995-0035. That's my direct line. I can also take texts on that number. I have an email address, like most people do. It's joe@dickersonrealty.com. And I also have a contact form on my website, which is dickersonrealty.com, which also has a whole bunch more blog articles that may be useful for buyers and sellers.
Okay. All right. Well, is there anything we haven't covered that you think would be useful for people to know?
Well, there's a lot we haven't covered. I'm going to say let's chat if you're looking to
He loves coffee. He would be happy to buy you a coffee anytime. He knows all the best coffee places. So, yeah. No strings, right?
No strings. None.
Yeah. I'll hold him to it. Don't worry. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. I hope that you've gotten a lot of value from today's session, whether or not you decide to work with Joe or us. Really, you get us as a package. Right?
It's true. It's true.
Do you want to wrap up?
In summary, thanks for joining us. I'm Joe Dickerson, my wife Annie. Thank you, Annie. And, well, I just told you where to find me. I'm sure there will be links below or above or wherever you find this that will be more a direct method of contacting me. All right. Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye. Hope to meet you in person.